So our group's topic is SQL injections and its dangers. To first understand SQL injections, we need to know what SQL is. So what is SQL? It is a language which allows it to communicate and perform operations on a database like insertions, accesses, and modifications. It is the standard language for relational database management systems. The data is stored as a database object called tables. The tables will consist of columns and rows. On the figure on the right, the table owner has 3 columns: owner ID, first name, and last name. So now what are SQL injections? It is one of the oldest and most common hacking techniques that is still widely used today. SQL is used in most applications today to store information. Because SQL statements are still human written, errors are bound to be made. Hackers will exploit those issues using SQL injections. Essentially, SQL injections are malicious statements that allow attackers to gain access and manipulate sensitive information that may be contained within a database. Using SQL injection, attackers will be able to bypass basic authentication of a web page applications that do not have the correct measures to protect against them.
So, how do SQL injections work? SQL injections are as simple as they're relatively easy to perform. Essentially, an SQL injection is when SQL code is injected in a user query, returning info that the user should not be able to obtain. This is due to the security vulnerabilities on the database levels in the code. How is this possible? It is often a result of performing direct input between user and database. Allows for the hacker to send SQL query inputs directly to the database. A very common input is the entry of or1 equals 1. For example, take the simple query, select all from users where username is equal to a certain name. And a simple input would be a username and it would return that username in the row it's in. But if a hacker entered or1 equals 1, the query would become select from users where username is equal to or1 equals 1. Since 1 always equals 1, the hackers essentially tricked the database into returning all the rows of the entire database. And this can be seen in the picture on the right here, where they have the normal username password entry, and then this one where they have the user ID or1 equals 1. And the way they set it up is that it changes the SQL code to run with a clause of or1 equals 1, essentially returning all of the rows, giving the hacker access to the entire database. Now, the dangers of SQL injections. SQL injections are very dangerous for many reasons. They allow for the hacker to access and modify valuable and often private info. They can modify the actual database itself by dropping tables and data, this making for a very unstable database. Once executed, the hacker is usually capable of uploading malware to the site, which can then be executed when a user visits this site. Also, the easiness and likelihood of vulnerability contribute to the danger. Often a result of easily fixed yet often overlooked problems in code, 56% of applications that are written in PHP have at least one SQL vulnerability. And it is also easily done by non-coding proficient hackers, with many pre-built packages online capable of doing it. And right here I have a graph just showing the rates of high severity vulnerabilities by different types of hacks. And as you can see, SQL injection is fairly high, only really below 2 other kinds of vulnerabilities.
Now that we've learned what an SQL injection is and the dangers of SQL injections, we're going to learn how to prevent SQL injections. The most popular, most effective way is to use parameterized statements, which make sure that the parameters passed in are handled in a safe manner. You use prepared statements to preserve the intent of a query, and it allows the database to distinguish between the code and data. Not as popular but still effective is using a whitelist input validation. This is useful when parts of SQL queries aren't legal locations for the use of bound variables. And to do it, it tests an external input against a set of approved inputs. And this way, the application knows exactly what's desired. To finish off, we've included some examples here so you can see that SQL injections happen to the biggest companies in the world and they're a very, very dangerous threat, and it is always useful to know about them and to know how to prevent them.